This is the second of a two-part episode. In the last one, we looked at comments and statements made by General Valery Zaluzhny, the current ambassador for Ukraine in London, that he made at Chatham House on the 17th of October 2024. In a wide-ranging conversation, he talked to the director of Chatham House and discussed how the US and Europe can continue to support Ukraine in the face of Russia's full-scale invasion. But that followed on from Zelensky's announcement of his victory and peace plan made a couple of days before. Ukraine needs more weapons and seeks security guarantees. These are the central points made by Zelensky in his recent visit to Berlin. Additionally, Zelensky is stressing the need to show Moscow that it cannot win the war. With the upcoming election in the US, there is a race to get support for a concept of victory and initiate a negotiation for ending the war on favourable terms for Ukraine. But this is also happening at a time when Russian forces are making slow but steady progress along the front lines, and future support for Ukraine is in doubt. Zelensky presented his so-called victory plan to the Ukrainian parliament last week and aims to seek a just peace to the war with Russia thanks to military aid and guarantees from his allies. The plan consists of 5 main points and 3 secret annexes. We will discuss the main points, but of course, we are not party to the secret part of this plan. Ukraine's victory plan is a blueprint to strengthen our state and strengthen our positions to be strong enough to end the war, Zelensky said, adding, "If we start moving with this concrete plan of victory now, we may manage to end the war no later than next year." The idea is to ensure Ukraine gets ironclad security guarantees from allies and becomes well armed to prevent Russia from using any pause in the fighting to rearm and then attack again. Linked to this discussion is the urgent request to join NATO, a step that seems to be gaining some traction in the corridors of power within Brussels. But the inherent weaknesses and failures of previous initiatives, such as the Minsk Accords and Budapest memorandums, hang over these initiatives like a geopolitical memento mori, a memorial to optimism and delusion. This plan can be implemented. It depends on the partners, Zelensky said. It certainly does not depend on Russia. Zelensky has already presented his plan to US and European leaders, although so far the reaction from Kyiv's allies has been muted. Russia still evades honest diplomacy and throws more ultimatums in between the bombs, Zelensky said. Officially, the Kremlin maintains to the position that the special military operation must end with the fulfillment of all our previously set objectives. But many of these stated objectives are either built on myths and lies or else clearly are not achievable by a weakened Russian military that exchanges vast numbers of troops and equipment for tiny slivers of bomb-blasted wasteland in the devastated east of Ukraine. Looking at them realistically, Moscow's conditions amount to Kyiv's capitulation, a demand for Ukraine to withdraw from Russian-claimed territories, even ones that it does not even occupy at this point, abandon any intention to join NATO, guarantee the rights to Russian speakers, which were never denied in the first place, demilitarize and denazify. Given that NATO membership is pivotal to Ukraine's future security, there seems to be a fundamental gap in key demands made by Moscow and those that are acceptable to Ukraine. This is what's in Zelensky's plan. 1. Invitation to join NATO. Even though membership is still an issue for the future, an invitation to join would send a strong signal to the Russian leader, Vladimir Putin. An invitation is a strong decision that requires nothing but determination, the Ukrainian president said. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte would not say if he is working to rally the allies in support of Ukraine's push for an invitation to NATO, adding that ongoing discussions with Kiev and other member countries could not be shared by way of a press conference. The victory plan is not only about an invitation to become a member of NATO, the victory plan has more elements, said Rutte. He also reiterated that Russia has no role in deciding if Ukraine should be in NATO or not. Member countries have committed to Kiev's irreversible path to membership, but haven't issued an invitation or set any timeline around the process of accession. Point number 2, more weapons faster with no restrictions on their use. Ukraine has prepared a list of weapons to protect itself and to bring war closer to home for the Kremlin. It includes training and air defense capabilities to deter Russian attacks, real-time satellite data from allies, ending all restrictions on the use of donated weapons to strike inside Russia, and help from allies in shooting down missiles and drones over Ukrainian territory. None of these requests is new, and they've been made in various forms over the last months by Ukrainian officials, but also by many leading military analysts in the West. But as we know, many of the steps have been blocked over fears of crossing so-called Kremlin red lines, predominantly in Washington and Berlin. But Zelensky argued Ukraine's advance into Russia's Kursk region showed the lot of those supposed red lines are simply bluster and empty threats. Thanks to the Kursk operation, we saw that Putin doesn't have enough strength to hold his own territory when we push really hard, Zelensky said. Point number 3, deterrence. Ukraine proposes to deploy a comprehensive non-nuclear strategic deterrence package that will be sufficient to protect Ukraine from any future military threat from Russia. Faced with that, it is hoped Moscow would either join an honest diplomatic process for a just end to the war, or it would face no longer being able to continue to fight thanks to the aid being given to Ukraine. The exact weapons requested were not revealed by Zelensky, but he said leaders in the US, Germany, France, and the UK know what Kiev's priorities are for this phase of the war. Point 4, strategic economic potential. Ukraine proposes partners from the European Union and US sign a special agreement on common use of Ukraine's critical resources like lithium, gas, titanium, and others, and produce energy together in future. This is part of the plan to ensure the future economic resilience of Ukraine and attract an inflow of investment to rebuild its industrial base. Part 5, post-war perspectives. Ukraine would bolster European security thanks to its battle-hardened military. If the partners agree, we envisage replacing certain military contingents of the US armed forces stationed in Europe with Ukrainian units after the war, Zelensky said. Ukrainians have proven that they can be a force that Russian evil cannot overcome. As powerful as this idea may seem, it's this one that has received the coolest reception from allies so far. That is a sentiment shared by some of the Ukrainian MPs listening to the speech that felt it was extremely ambitious. But Roman Lazinsky, a Ukrainian soldier and member of the Liberal Holos Party, saw things similarly to Zelensky. On the one hand, plan sounds like a fantasy. On the other hand, Patriot, Storm Shadow, and F-16s used to be just as fantastic, as was the sinking of the large part of the Black Sea Fleet of the Russian Federation and the control of a piece of Kursk. Everything depends on the decisions of partners and the success of our diplomacy, Lazinsky said. However, Zelensky did not explain how he plans to achieve the implementation of these points. The harshest reaction has predictably come from Viktor Orban. His comment on Zelensky's victory plan was to label it as more than frightening. The Hungarian leader urged Germany and France to start negotiations with Moscow instead of helping Ukraine, but his stance puts him at odds with most other EU leaders. Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban has called a Ukrainian plan to request weapons and security guarantees from the West more than frightening. The populist leader was reacting to the victory plan outlined by Zelensky last Wednesday ahead of a European Council meeting that was to negotiate future EU aid to Ukraine. I'm one of those who urged the European Union to change its current strategy. The European Union went into this war with a badly organized, badly executed, badly calculated strategy for which the President of the Commission bears the main responsibility, Orban wrote, referring to Ursula von der Leyen. We are losing this war, so the strategy is not working. But this does not mean that we need more war, more dangerous and long-range weapons. It means that we need to change from a war strategy to a peace strategy. We need a ceasefire and peace talks. The irony, of course, of Orban using the term we is extraordinary, given that Hungary is not doing any of the fighting and indeed is blocking key parts of EU military and civilian aid to Ukraine. Orban added that he would urge German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and French President Emmanuel Macron to start negotiations with Moscow on behalf of the entire EU as soon as possible to find a way out of the situation. Fortunately, Orban does not represent the entirety of the EU or even a majority. Finally, Zelensky has created a kind of ultimatum with regards to the victory and peace plan, or at least framed the challenges in stark terms to try and jolt allies out of their apparent complacency and indecision. We need NATO or nukes, and we want NATO, said Zelensky. Ukraine suffered uniquely from its 1994 decision to denuclearize under pressure from the US and with the acquiescence of Britain as well. In his speech, Zelensky recalled that Ukraine agreed to give up its stock of Soviet nuclear weapons stored on its territory in exchange for security assurances. These proved to be worthless. But Ukraine's survival can only be assured by joining NATO or giving Kiev nuclear weapons, Zelensky said. Which of these major nuclear powers suffered from the Budapest Memorandum? All of them? No, Ukraine did, Zelensky said at the European Council summit in Brussels. Who gave up nuclear weapons? All of them? No, Ukraine. Who is fighting today? All of them? No, just Ukraine. Either Ukraine will have nuclear weapons and that will be our protection, he said, or we should have some sort of alliance. Apart from NATO, today we do not know any effective alliances. NATO countries are not at war. People are all alive in NATO countries, and thank God for that. That is why we choose NATO, not nuclear weapons, Zelensky said. The Ukrainian leader later clarified that Ukraine is not building its own nuclear weapons and does not have an equivalent program at the moment. What I meant is that today there is no stronger security guarantee for us besides NATO membership, he said. But Kiev must get the approval of all 32 NATO members to join. This is not likely with the pro-Russian Prime Minister Robert Fico in charge of Slovakia, who has vowed to block Ukraine's accession while he is in office. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, whose relationship with Zelensky is more than a little rocky, also labelled Ukraine's victory plan more than frightening, as we've said. So there is little optimism that Orban will acquiesce to let Ukraine join NATO. It's far more likely that he will toe the Kremlin line as well in blocking accession. That binary choice, as presented by Zelensky, NATO or nukes, was designed to make allies sit up and think and speed up their deliberations, take Ukraine and Europe's security seriously, especially in a week where North Korea started sending troops into the fight. But for cast iron security, Ukraine may need NATO and nukes, as the deterrent power of the alliance is increasingly in doubt, and as the will and capacity of the US to uphold the international rules-based order crumbles. US foreign policy weakness and European division may end up creating an increasingly insecure world where many more countries scramble to acquire the only guarantee of self-defense, real deterrence, and that is nuclear weapons. And apparently, becoming a member of the nuclear club is the only way to get a seat at the table, a strategic voice to be taken seriously instead of ending up on the menu. All your engagement with the videos on this channel is massively appreciated, as well as encouraging comments and the financial support you provide. Some of you will have donated to Ukrainian charities, including the ones listed in the descriptions of these videos. I know many of you ask how you could be doing more to help Ukraine, and that includes me. Well, here is news of a project that I think could make a huge difference. It's been initiated by Silicon Curtain, and I hope will support Ukrainians on the ground and in the diaspora and create real impact to help ensure a Ukrainian victory. It's a documentary film to be made in Ukraine later this year and shown internationally, hopefully at film festivals and on Silicon Curtain as well. We aim in the film to follow the 75th aid convoy to Ukraine by a remarkable team based in Poland, delivering vital medical, humanitarian, and military aid that helps Ukrainians remain resilient. No doubt the efforts of this team has saved innumerable lives of Ukrainian servicemen and women fighting on the front line of freedom. We have a unique opportunity to share authentic stories on the world stage through this film, via film festivals, social media, and streaming to Silicon Curtain. The film will provide a counterweight to Russian propaganda films such as Russians at War. It will show spontaneous stories gathered on the journey as we travel the length of the front line. Filming footage and interviews along the journey, we will have a unique opportunity to convey the shared humanity and common cause of Ukrainians living with war. The film will focus on stories of hope and resilience with the war as a backdrop and aims to create a compelling narrative and tone that is entirely authentic. Well, here's the important bit. We're aiming to raise £12,000 to record the dog sled tournament and create a stunning trailer for the project. Overall, the project will cost up to $100,000 for end-to-end production and distribution. For the price of a DVD rental or a streamed movie, you could help create a film that raises awareness of Ukraine's struggle and generates funds for further aid convoys. Supporters of the film will get early access to see it and free access to the film for all time. This is a bold and ambitious project, but it will be led by an experienced documentary team with a professional cinematographer. It is time, I think, to join together to achieve something powerful and unique for Ukraine. After reviewing many project ideas, we feel that this is the best way that we can have an impact. Tentatively titled To the Edge of Freedom, here is a short description of the film. A world champion dog sled racer navigates dangerous obstacles through the apocalypse-like battle zones of Ukraine's front line, delivering life-saving aid to ordinary heroes engaged in extraordinary acts of valor. Igor Traks, the team leader, is a remarkable personality and relentless supporter of Ukraine throughout the full-scale war. The film starts in Finland at the World Championship Dog Sled Tournament with Igor. Fresh from his 11th World Championship in dog sled racing, Igor Trans leads his foundation's 75th humanitarian mission to the front lines of war-torn Ukraine. For this mission, Igor's team is joined by a few friends from the US and UK who will not only provide hands-on support, but share what they learn on the ground with news sources in the West. Our cameras follow Igor from Finland to Gdansk, to Lviv, to Mykolaiv, Kherson, to Dnipro, Pokrovsk, Kharkiv, and other frontline cities facing the brunt of Russian aggression. Along the way, they will meet colourful and determined individuals fighting for their families' right to survive. Igor and his team navigate life and death situations to bring much-needed supplies, visiting bunkers, hospitals, and units whose success may not merely determine the fate of this ancient culture, but of the West itself. The film will follow Igor's latest aid convoy to the front line and back again. I hope this description will inspire you to become part of the film project and make a difference to the war's outcome, a war that Ukraine must win clearly and decisively. Please do find the donation link in the description of the video, and do reach out to me if you have any questions at all about the project and its intended impact.